Good morning, Lagos. It is time for Freshly Pressed. That's our in depth analysis of the day's news headlines. My name is Fola.
My name is Valentine. Freshly Pressed 981 is the hashtag. If you're going on Twitter to join the conversation, please do type at hashtag Freshly Pressed 981 when you tweet at Smooth 981 FM in reaction to the stories we're about to share. Joining us to do analysis of these stories, we have davoe okorie. Good morning, davoe.
Morning, Lagos.
Good morning.
Cool. Your new ministerial appointees. Sorry,
Mm,
they're not ministers.
mm, they are
Mm,
now
They are now
ministers.
they're
ministers.
not ministers. But
Welcome.
they haven't started working.
Welcome. And we welcome adedumade at adedumade on Twitter. Good morning.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, guys, and shout out to all the lawyers in town for the NBA conference.
Welcome. Nice one.
Nice.
And shout out to Mr. C,
To the Leonard
Mr.
fellas.
CEEE on Twitter.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. You're welcome.
To join the conversation again, you can go through WhatsApp to send messages. WhatsApp number is 0809-444-0981. We're streaming live on YouTube. You can also leave a message there.
All right, going straight to the stories this morning. I'll start with Adedumade with the Punch newspaper. The headline says, "We're challenging UK's court's $9.6 billion judgment in the United States." The president has directed the EFCC and the National Intelligence Agency, the IG of Police, to conduct a thorough investigation into the activities of the Process and Industrial Development Limited, which was recently asked by a UK court to seize $9.6 billion in Nigerian assets. Now, that is quite a thing. What do you think?
Well, this story I think is going to stay with us for a while because it's been here last week. It was here sometime this week as
Yes.
well. I remember Cheta spoke about it earlier this week, and well, I also remember watching the AG speak on this issue
Hmm.
at the ongoing uh, NBA AGC. That is the conference, and really, in my opinion, I wasn't really impressed with what I heard him say, especially as regards to this contract. But just so people will know, the grounds on which Nigeria wants to challenge the judgment is that one, the parties were wrong from the get-go, meaning that it was a contract between PAISD and the Ministry of Petroleum.
Okay.
Now, naturally, the Ministry of Petroleum does not control gas, and they said that when that contract was signed, it was just the two of them, and all the other relevant agencies and ministries were not carried along. So that's the first ground. Now, the second ground that they hope to challenge is that the award was given on the grounds of what they call future earnings. So, because the contract was cancelled, the company claimed that we had robbed them of future earnings, and it was on that ground that the initial 6 billion was awarded.
Okay.
Now, also there's the issue of the $40 million the company claimed to have spent even at the time the contract was cancelled, and that so we are saying what our government is saying is that out of that $40 million, that they've not really seen proof that no machinery was brought to Nigeria, that no cent, according to the words of the CBN governor, was brought to Nigeria. But I understand that generally, when you want to have a contract, especially one of such magnitude, it's customary for you to engage professionals. It's customary for you to draw up a plan, and all those kind of things might cost money, especially with the size of the project that we're talking about. So yes, they will have spent some money. $40 million, we might need to see the proof.
It
But
is quite steep.
yeah, but I do understand that they certainly would have spent some cash.
And this sounds like why the government is saying that, there's a suspected foul play in the negotiation of the contract because it was done in the previous administration.
Yeah, it was done in 2010, and the contract was cancelled, which I believe came from such sentiment, if I would say. But there's also the issue of the negotiated sum that we had before,
Okay.
because this 6.9 billion that was awarded was negotiated by the Jonathan administration to about $853 million. I believe that if we had paid then, or if we had entered some form of a payment plan then we might not be where we are today. So now that they want to challenge, my fear is that if they appeal, which they intend to, then the interest on the sum might actually continue to grow. And what happens if in the future the court now awards that yes, the tribunal was right to give such a decision? We're going
to be in debt.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Adedumade. So let's go to the Guardian. Davoe. Well, the Standard Organization of Nigeria is thinking of new standards for cereal products. This is in an effort to boost breakfast meals with high dietary values. This has been in the news for a couple of days, though. What do you think?
Yes, here we are at Freshly Pressed. So this is just for us. I wish our name was among. However, the SON has done what is right in working with some other agencies to review the quality and standard of cereal products, okay, within the country. And in terms of review, what they're saying is that that cereal-based foods prepared primarily from one or more meal grains should constitute at least 25% of the final mixture of a dry weight basis. Now, that just simply means the constituent, 25% of it must be real seed, okay? There are many other alternatives that are used that are not as healthy, and this was in a bid to raise the health and nutritional content of our cereals to not just help Nigerians in terms of health content, but also to boost trade so that our products become more competitive in continental and international waters.
I wonder if there are plans to look into cereals that we have the Nigerian version and then we have the imported version. I don't want to mention brand names, but you know what I mean.
Yes, it cuts across. It cuts across. And what they said, these cereals covered cornflakes. There's so many of them, local and international. Maize flour, maize grits, Rice Krispies in the various variants that come, rice flour, and those that come from toasting like oatmeal, and then toasted whole grain oats. Now, however, I did not see, or I think their review did not cover flour-based products, and I really wanted this because I think there's a connection between the swallows, like the flours that come off the plantain, the wheats, the cassava, which is gari at the end of the day, the yam. That's the elubo, the rice products, etc. You know how we turn some of our flour products into flour to be able to make swallow, and it is of essence that not only if you've noticed within the market, many have begun to package what normally used to be sold just openly on the road.
Indeed.
One, not only packaging it, but the fortification with nutrients is a part and parcel of it, so that at the end of the day, they are actually monitoring the quality of what is produced out there, not just because it's traditional. In some cases, like those who sell the gari flour, what most of them have done is to fortify it with plantain flour, which also gives it nutrients and iron, etc. So the SON has done this for cereal. I expect them to extend this across to the other flour-based products, so that at the end of the day, wherever you are within the country, when you're taking your swallow or your breakfast, in whichever form you're taking it,
you can be assured.
Yes, and then
you're taking
audience can also be assured that Freshly Pressed is also packed full with all forms of nutrients.
Nice.
Shout out to all the brands who are interested in sponsoring this segment.
Nice. I'll come back to you on this report from the ICPC, that's the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. So an official of that commission says that Nigerians pay an estimated 4 billion naira in bribes every year. 400 billion. Oh my goodness. Okay. Now that's a little. Do you think that's outrageous?
Well, do I think it's outrageous? No. Because literally, you'd be surprised how much you have to facilitate government workers in order for them to do their job.
Yeah.
What? No, relax
Calm down. Go on.
What did he like?
Seriously, because I was having this discussion with a friend yesterday, and we are asking ourselves why, even in courts, you want to get some things done in court, and you have to facilitate your way through. You go to the police station, you want to get some things done. you want to get anything done, you have
have
to
to get it.
facilitate your way through. So it's a big problem. And this story talks about one, the effects of corruption so far,
Yeah.
the culture of corruption within Nigerians, and also the possibilities that Nigeria has if we're able to curb corruption. Now, this 400 billion is just the one paid for public services. That means if you really want to check out all the other indices for corruption in Nigeria in order to determine the amount, we might be going to 1 trillion there about, which is actually overwhelming, which should be overwhelming for us, and which should actually bring us back to the drawing board. Now, the problem now is trying to reduce corruption. If we can get that working, it's going to be great. As a form of recommendation, we've tried everything. We've tried trying to sue more people, but the more we try to do that, the more it seems like we're not being effective, especially when we now see that the government kind of supports that culture by enabling people who are being, should I say, cited for corruption even within its administration. So when we see such, we don't believe that the government itself is sincere in the fight for corruption. But I believe that aside from the government trying to push down the to be the ones championing, the people, that is we Nigerians, also have to take on this cause to fight corruption. So next time a government official or a public officer is asking you to pay for something, I think we should all just start revolting. And,
Could it
maybe
be
we'll
that?
get
Could
to
Could
the-
it be that some of the systems that we have are dysfunctional, such that they provide loopholes where these things can happen?
Most definitely.
Like you
the
talked
system
about
is rotten.
paying to facilitate government to work.
Yes, and now, for instance, now I'll use examples of the police. When you go there and they ask you to facilitate, it's not because they are out to extort you, but it's because if you don't do that, there's no way they're going to do the job. So they need four to go and pick up the person. They need to do some investigation. They need to write. These guys don't have paper. They have to buy all these things. for
Yeah, that's the
themselves.
cost of corruption, actually. But I'll be frank with you. I think that figure is grossly understated
Yes.
because when you add
Understated.
Yes.
when you add the percentage, if you've heard that video that's been going around recently, though it's an old one, of how people visited Nigeria and they spoke with some of our officials. How did you acquire all this? They said 10% on that road
Yeah,
contract,
had to.
20% on this contract.
And we remember a certain governor who was caught on video allegedly.
I mean,
Yes.
allegedly, excuse me, we saw it with our video.
The barbaric Ghana video.
Direct eyes. We were not blind, but he still won, and that is
Still allegedly.
yes. He's the governor.
No,
now.
no, there's a petition.
Well, the truth is this, right? It's grossly understated because it has become culture. At some point, we have to face the facts about our nasty culture of corruption. Nothing happens without it, and like you said, if you don't pay it, you will stand in that line and not even get attended to.
All right. Diva, I'm staying with you. Thank you very much, Adedumade. So, Buhari appoints new board for NDIC. This report is found in Thisday. The president approving a 16-man new board for the Niger Delta Development Commission. Of course, Dr. Pius Odubu from Edo State is the chairman.
What are they really doing in the NDDC? That's my headline question because
Niger Delta Development.
yes,
Development
Niger Delta. How many states are involved, and yet they have a 16-man board? There really must be something there. EFCC, please keep close eyes on that. But I think many people know the history behind the Niger Delta Development Company. It was
Yeah.
built
Commission.
as a response to the agitation from the Niger Delta that they were not as developed as
As they
their contribution to the national commonwealth. Now, in January, the president did dismantle the current board and put in an interim one. So currently, he sent 16 names, which was announced by the permanent secretary to the secretary of the government of the federation, and they are to resume on Monday with their new CVs for briefing, etc. and co. Now, this list is subject to Senate confirmation. Now, it's curious that in explaining, because the NDDC board obviously contains members who are from the NDDC states, okay? And let's repeat ourselves, Niger Delta states. But you see, Niger Delta Development Company. But commission, sorry. But they operate more like a company. But the truth is, they had representation, okay, across board from the states that we know. And there was also, the president also appointed someone from the Northeast, okay? Now, the Northeast I can also understand because they produce oil or they are exploring oil within the Lake Chad region. All right.
Okay.
But what is curious to me is how there's also a northwest representation. What is he doing there? Because I don't know, I'm not sure, I stand to be corrected, that on some of the other northern development agencies and commissions, there's no South-South representation on their boards. So I'm really wondering what's going on here. They have a purpose and they have a reason why they've been established. It shouldn't be politicized.
But beyond ethnic lines, if you look at the individuals and their portfolios, or what the kind of professionalism they're bringing to bear, do you think they're qualified enough?
No, it's not about the qualification. It's about how.
I'm asking, looking beyond ethnic.
No, of course they're qualified, but it wasn't meant to be. Yes, but it wasn't meant to be a political agency. It was meant to do. Remember, there was a reason why the interventions for the Niger Delta came as one, statutory allocations, which are higher than most states, 13% derivation, the creation of the NDDC board. Then they now added the creation of the Niger Delta Ministry. So we do have an objective here we're trying to achieve.
Thank you very much. The achievements will be tracked, but we have messages on WhatsApp. This one is from Emeka. Emeka says ICPC should go further to tell us the rankings of the public sector in that report. That's about the bribes, number of bribes collected, the amount. So that way we can focus on the top three or top two or top three. Thank you, Emeka. Chikwado, Ayo is on leave. Ifeanyi from Iba says the amount is grossly understated, still relating to the bribery toll. So remember the maxim, that Nigeria is a fantastically corrupt country. Yinka says, Davoe talking about standing in line. Also, until my insurance company wished me happy birthday 20 days ago, before my actual birthday, I never knew my day of birth or date of birth was wrong on my passport biodata page.
What now?
Long story short, even immigration officials are telling me it's difficult to correct it, and it may take months to get it fixed. Now, you people charging 150,000 to 200,000 naira just to assist in effecting that correction. Imagine the system we run. Yinka, thank you very much for that. Perfect segue into this next story from New Telegraph. Visa reciprocity fee. It's been one of the most talked about topics since yesterday. United States introduces visa reciprocity fee for Nigerians is the headline here. It's to take effect tomorrow. It affects several categories: the BF, H1B, IL, and R classifications. That's actually just going through professional students, media, religious, and those who are going, doing company transfers, or rather intercompany transfers. But looking at this story, Mr. C, are you going to pay that amount?
Yes, I will. It's about time, actually.
But take us through this story.
Okay, so it's about time that the U.S. government did this, and I'm surprised it took them 18 months to get to this point, frankly. Now, what has happened is, what has obtained in the past is, the Nigerian government, for reasons yet unknown, charged a very high fee to Americans wanting to come to Nigeria.
Over $200.
I don't know what they're doing, what they're exactly doing to justify the amount, but that's for another day. So Americans were paying more to obtain visas than Nigerians paying for visas to go to America. And since early 2018, the American government has been engaging the Nigerian government over this issue. My question is, how long does it take to say no? If the Nigerian government was not going to accede to the American request, how long did it take to communicate a formal no?
How long did it take who exactly?
The Nigerian government to tell the American government that it will not honor the request to reduce the fees. So what has happened now is the fees are only applicable if your visa application succeeds.
So just for clarity, the extra fees.
The extra fees.
The extra fees.
Yes, so you have the normal MRV fees. MRV is machine readable visa fees.
Perfect.
Then you have the extra fees which kick in if you're successful. And those fees can only be paid at a U.S. embassy or a consulate. You cannot pay it at the bank. But the good news for Nigerians, it's not all gloom. If the Nigerian government reduces the fees that American nationals have to pay to apply for Nigerian visas, then the Americans, in line with their reciprocity rule, will then
We'll
reduce
do
the
the
fees.
same.
And in explaining this, the consul actually explained to say that when a foreign government imposes an additional fees on U.S. citizens, the United States will impose reciprocal fees on citizens of that country for similar types of visas. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria,
Yes.
but it's a policy that they put in place. But it's interesting to see that they spend that much, they had that much patience.
Yeah, next level governance. So what we need to do now is
Yes.
we need to reach out to our elected representatives and put pressure on them to talk to the government. The government has to reduce the fee. $200 for what?
It's not just the
That's big.
$200. I think that there are also issues with even getting the visa, the application process, and then getting visas to come into Nigeria for foreigners.
So as it stands, the B1 visa goes for $110.
The extra fee is 160,
Ah,
B2.
and it's payable within 5 days.
5 days. Huh?
Yes.
Oh boy. All right, let's move on to the next story. And this one's for you, Davoe. From Daily Times, 3 persons killed, 32 others injured as a cement truck allegedly belonging to Dangote company crushes a BRT bus yesterday. This happened. Three people lost their lives, over 32 casualties. But take us through the story, Davoe.
Yeah, I think many have heard about it because for some time on that day, the BRT buses altogether shut down. But it was quite unfortunate on Tuesday that along the Ogolonto area of Ikorodu, the biggest cement truck, Patriot, one of his trucks veered off the lane and crushed a BRT bus, right? And you know the BRT bus always takes the, especially on that side, the
sure.
extreme side of the lane. Now, and the truck was heavy laden with cement, so it came with some force. Now the accident reportedly had about 32 persons injured, which were taken to the hospital immediately, and at the end of the day we lost about 3 people. Now unfortunately, and this is the part that breaks my heart, is that in trying to carry out the investigation, the police said that the driver sped off. Okay.
Sped off or ran away?
Yeah, he ran away. So, and I find that highly irresponsible of the driver
Fear.
as a professional, 2 as a citizen and as a person. This was not just any type of driver. It wasn't like it was a commercial driver. Like the downfall buses that we have. This was a trained company driver, and for whatever happened, I think that just was the worst kind of reaction to this at the end of the day. Whilst the police have said that they're not in doubt as to what to do because they know the company that he works for.
And there's a bill of lading and all the
Yes,
documents
definitely
associated.
because it was a huge company operation. It's easy to identify, and the driver will be produced. However, we still call out on the families that have had injured ones. May their souls rest in peace for those that passed away. People should at all times maintain levels of safety and alertness, especially on our roads. It hasn't been identified how this happened, but it's obvious that some form of the driver lost some form of aptitude while driving, and this happened at the end of the day.
All right, let's move on to this next story. But before that, let's take a few messages here on WhatsApp. This one is from Emeka Onelum from Amor.
Emeka says that a lot of these trucks in Lagos are driven by very young, inexperienced drivers. A woman was rushed to my hospital in Mile 2 after she was knocked down by a careless truck driver. She fractured 4 bones in her body and is presently being booked for surgery. The earlier something is done about these truck drivers and their trucks, the better for everyone.
Benga Komu says, how come these trucks are not regulated and scrutinized the way private vehicles are? We have LASMA, we have FRSC, we have VIO. What is their responsibility? Interesting question there. If Bar says the NDDC thing, in my estimation, is just there for political reason. They don't have any projects. I'm from that region. And he continues, it says the timing of the visa reciprocity is pretty wrong. It would suggest that it's tit for tat when viewed against the FBI regulations.
That's
about
diplomacy
Nigeria.
for you.
Yep. Next story from Thisday newspaper, NAPTIP, that's National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, have debunked, in very strong terms, allegations that have been made against the agency by the 90-page report yesterday at adedumade. And in a swift reaction, NAPTIP called it a pack of lies. Your thoughts on this?
Well,
Let's take from the allegations they made and then analyze the story.
yes, so basically the allegations they have made generally is that one, a lot of these survivors who are in these shelters still have a lot of health challenges which are not being adequately addressed. Now, there's also the issue of the financial challenges. They are in poverty, like many other Nigerians out there. Then also abhorrent conditions and failure to provide necessary support. Now, those are generally the conditions in which that report was based. Now, from what the NAPTIP has said, I think it's important, first of all, to note that NAPTIP is trying their best to do a great job in actually solving the crisis of trying to find that where they said that thing. Yeah, so they're doing a great job, and I think we should commend them one way or the other. Now, going forward, what they have done in order to help these people is they have built shelters. Right, and they put people who have returned to Nigeria in shelters for a number of reasons. One, they have said the security reasons, because some of these people, the people that took them into the business, are trying to find them or maybe hurt them or harm them to prevent them from speaking. Some have said they don't even want to reunite with their families because some of their family members were part of the people that introduced them to the traffickers also in the first place. And so generally that's what they're saying. But what I believe is the major issue here is because I've also read part of the report and some of what the people in those shelters are saying. The major or the underlying note there is they do not feel like they're being productive. They feel like they're just being there behind closed doors. They cannot talk to people. They cannot reach out to people. They cannot connect with their families even if they want to. And I think they are not being given adequate information as to how long they'll be there, what they'll be given when they are leaving, and how they will generally be reintroduced into society. So the major problem now here is long-term comprehensive assistance, which these people need. Now that is going to cost some money. I do not believe NAPTIP has that money. Now there are also a number of NGOs that partner with the agency in order to help support these people. Some give them financial training, some give them business support, some give them emotional support as well, and some even give them psychiatric support, so people that need to talk to a doctor. So yes, but it is not enough. There is so much more that needs to be done to fully rehabilitate these people into the country, and there should be a policy for it. Like there should be an actual plan, not that you just bring them there and keep them there for a long period of time without they knowing what they're going. So there should be a policy and a plan. You're about to say.
But in reaction to your call for policy, the Director General
talked about the Palermo
Protocol, which really enshrines these policies. The protocol to prevent and suppress or punish trafficking in persons. One, against smuggling of migrants.
No, they are punishing, but we're not really talking about the punishment now. We're talking about
the rehabilitation of people who have been trafficked.
Yes, the major accusation against NAPTIP from Human Rights Watch was bordered on, they said, very strong allegations. They said that they are putting victims in detention camps and denying them necessary care and holding them in slavery-like conditions.
Yes, and Dane tried to explain the reasons why those circumstances could be perceived as being in detention camps, but they are not being detained. That's what she tried to explain. And she tried to explain the security reasons why some of them are being kept back and being refused. But I think everything just boils down to money. Basically. Money for the
loan or money and transparency.
Money. On the issue of transparency, that is very good. I would like to see a number of our press people actually visit these shelters and see for ourselves what's going on there.
Thank you very much, adedumade. Let's move on to you, Mr. C, for this next story. Businesses, travelers suffer over tighter border watch. We know some border has been closed along borders around land borders around Nigeria. He said the tight security when they started last week. He said it started to last for 28 days. But looking at this report, it said price of rice, for instance, that used to sell for 11,000 now has spiked to about 14,500 naira.
Yes.
Take us through the story.
Smuggled rice.
Okay, so last week Wednesday, the federal government announced the commencement of Operation Swift Response, which comprises the Nigerian Customs Service, the Nigerian Immigration Service, the Armed Forces, and the police, alongside other security intelligence agencies. Apparently, the exercise is supposed to protect our borders.
And check smuggling.
Well, not so much smuggling, but check our borders. Now, what is interesting is we have the ECOWAS protocol already in place, which guarantees free movement across your borders. The first question that comes to my mind is, before instituting this exercise or before commencing it, did you talk to the other ECOWAS states? Because we are regaled with stories within the story where people were just suddenly stranded. Now, the price of rice, smuggled rice, has gone up. And what is more interesting is the Nigerian Customs Service, in fairness to them, says that if you have valid legal documents, you'll be allowed to cross. But vehicles are not crossing. Now, vehicles carrying goods, carrying all sorts of produce, they're stuck at the border, they're wasting away. And the Nigerian Customs Service also says they don't know how long the exercise will last. Now, which is really shocking because you cannot have that sort of situation here. And I'm very sure, I'll be surprised to find out that we're not in breach of the ECOWAS protocol. So it's something the federal government needs to look into urgently. And I believe they can run this exercise without shutting down the border.
Thank you, Mr. C. Check him out at Mr. C with a lot of E's, apparently about 5 E's. So that's on Twitter. Davoe Okorie, thank you. He's at Davoe Okorie on Twitter. Adedumade is at Adedumade. I like how you keep your name simple.
Have a great day, guys.
You too. Thanks.
The headlines, the stories,
They're causing inflation.
the news.
I lost a truck once at the